When the Vows Turned to Ashes, Chapter 1. The Perfect Day. There's a reason they call it the big day, because it's supposed to change your life. At least that's what everyone told Emily. For months, her Pinterest boards overflowed with white lace pastel bouquets and glowing couples smiling under twinkle lights. She watched every romantic comedy she could find, convinced that, if she planned hard enough, she could build a fairy tale strong enough to block out the real world. Her fiancé, Tyler, wasn't much for weddings. "It's just a party," he'd shrug, half amused as she obsessed over linen swatches and cake tastings. Emily pretended not to care. After all, wasn't that every groom? But late at night, she wondered if he really saw this day the way she did. For her, the wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a performance, a statement to family, friends, and a world that had never seen her as enough. Her parents, long divorced, had agreed on a truce for the sake of appearances. Her mother demanded handwritten invitations and crystal flutes. "You only marry once, Emily." While her father insisted on inviting his new girlfriend, Lila, who was barely old enough to order champagne. Emily's future mother-in-law, an expert in passive-aggressive advice, sent her subtle suggestions. "You know, sweetheart, off-shoulder dresses are hard to pull off unless you have the right figure. I'm sure your family will help out with the budget. These venues are so expensive." Emily smiled, nodded, and internalized every word. She doubled her skincare routine, slashed her carbs, and begged the venue for a discount she knew she'd never get. But there was more beneath the surface. Tyler's best man, Josh, was a college friend with a gift for crude jokes and a knack for finding trouble. Emily's bridesmaid, Zoe, had dated Tyler briefly, and even though everyone swore it was ancient history, Emily could feel the tension like static before a storm. Her younger brother, Ethan, was supposed to walk her down the aisle, but he was stuck in rehab, and no one was sure he'd make it out in time. Still, Emily clung to hope. She believed in the perfect day, even if it meant ignoring the cracks beneath the icing. She played peacemaker between her mother and Lila, reassured Zoe that they were totally cool, and convinced herself that Tyler's emotional distance was just nerves. The night before the wedding, the rehearsal dinner was a minefield. Lila wore a dress too short for comfort. Her mother drank too much wine and made passive jabs about starter marriages, and Josh gave a toast that nearly started a fistfight. Tyler disappeared halfway through dessert, leaving Emily to fend off relatives who only remembered her as the awkward one from family reunions. When Emily finally crawled into bed, she stared at the ceiling, replaying every awkward moment. But tomorrow, she promised herself, would be different. She would wake up, walk down that aisle, and prove, to her family, to Tyler, and to herself, that she was worthy of a perfect, unforgettable day. If only she knew how quickly perfection can shatter. Chapter 2. Hidden Fault Lines. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and cloudless, the kind of day people always say is a good omen. Emily stared at herself in the mirror, clutching her bouquet so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Outside the bridal suite, laughter and shouts echoed down the hotel hallways, but inside, the air was thick with nerves and the smell of too much hairspray. Her mother was already fussing over the seating chart, red pen in hand, muttering about mistakes. And how could you put Aunt Jo next to Dad's girlfriend? Emily barely listened. Her heart hammered in her chest as she replayed the schedule in her mind. Hair at 8, makeup at 9, photos at 10, ceremony at noon. Not a minute to spare. Any misstep could turn her perfect day into a disaster. Zoe, the bridesmaid, arrived with coffee and the kind of forced cheer that fools no one. "You look amazing, Em. Seriously, you're glowing." Emily tried to smile but noticed Zoe's eyes flicking to her own phone, fingers tapping out messages as if she wanted to be anywhere else. Emily wanted to ask if everything was okay, but bit her tongue. She couldn't afford drama, not today. The first sign of trouble came during the pre-wedding photo shoot. The photographer, hired at enormous expense, was late. When he arrived, he seemed flustered, barking orders, positioning the bridal party in awkward, unnatural poses. Emily's father arrived with Lila on his arm, who wore a dress so tight it left nothing to the imagination. Her mother glared daggers, whispering to anyone who'd listen that some people have no shame. The two sides of the family barely looked at each other. Tyler's family was no better. His mother cornered Emily just before the ceremony, clutching a sequined purse like a weapon. "I just want you to know, dear, that in our family we believe in simple values. No need for all this extravagance." Emily nodded, teeth clenched. Behind her, Tyler's younger brother snickered, nudging Josh, who winked at Emily as if they shared a private joke. But the real fault line ran deeper than bad seating or awkward relatives. It was the quiet humiliation of realizing that, for all her effort, Emily didn't quite fit into Tyler's world, or even her own family's. When she overheard her aunt say, "At least she finally landed someone," Emily's throat closed up. She caught her reflection in a window and saw, not a glowing bride, but a girl playing dress-up for an audience that would never clap loud enough. At the ceremony, her brother Ethan still hadn't arrived. The music started late. The flower girl tripped and cried. The officiant mispronounced her last name. The tiny mistakes felt like signs, like the universe was warning her, but she pressed on, willing herself not to cry. After the vows during cocktail hour, the cracks widened. Tyler's best man told a crude story in his toast, making half the guests squirm. Zoe disappeared, and when Emily found her, she was arguing with Josh outside by the dumpsters. Her mother cornered her, hissing that Lila is embarrassing everyone, while Tyler's mother sniffed, "We always knew you'd pick a dress like that." Emily smiled, nodded, and felt herself splintering inside. She wondered just for a moment if she could slip away, run down the street, past the limos and the guests, until she found a place where no one expected her to be perfect. But the world spun on, the music started up, and Emily found herself being swept into the reception, playing the role she'd rehearsed for months. No one saw the cracks, but she felt them with every step. By the time the first dance began, Emily realized her wedding day wasn't building toward a fairy tale ending. It was unraveling, one thread at a time. Chapter 3. Public Embarrassment. For all of Emily's careful planning, the reception was chaos from the very first minute. The hotel's event manager had misread the menu order, and half the hors d'oeuvres were missing. The bar ran out of Prosecco before the first toast. Somewhere between the bouquet toss and the father-daughter dance, the air conditioning sputtered and died, leaving the ballroom hot and sticky. But the real disaster wasn't in the logistics. It was in the people. Emily could see it in the way her father's girlfriend Lila flirted openly with the DJ, drawing disgusted stares from older relatives, in the way Tyler's mother organized a family-only photo and quietly excluded Emily's brother Ethan, who had finally arrived looking exhausted and thin. Emily's smile grew more brittle with every passing minute. She tried to keep the peace, diffusing arguments between relatives, thanking everyone for coming, promising herself she'd be a good bride, whatever that meant. The world spun on, but she felt stuck in slow motion, as if watching her own life fall apart in a series of little humiliations. Then came the best man's speech. Josh had always been a wild card, but no one expected him to grab the mic after 3 whiskeys and start with, "Tyler and I have seen some wild nights, and believe me, not all of them were with Emily." Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Emily's heart pounded. Josh continued, "You know, I always thought Tyler would be the last of us to settle down. I mean, the stories I could tell, but I won't, because I actually like Emily, mostly." There were gasps, a few uncomfortable giggles. Emily glanced at Tyler, who stared down at the table, face red. Josh didn't stop. He went on, half joking, half mocking, dropping veiled hints about old flames, wild parties, and that time in Vegas that no one talks about. Emily could feel her cheeks burning. It was supposed to be the happiest night of her life, and here she was, reduced to a punchline in a story she never wanted to hear. She tried to laugh it off, but the damage was done. After Josh finally staggered off stage, the energy in the room changed. Some guests whispered. Others eyed Emily with a mix of sympathy and judgment. As if that wasn't enough, the next blow came during the cake cutting. As Emily and Tyler posed for photos, Lila, clearly tipsy, stumbled into the spotlight and loudly exclaimed, "I hope you guys make it longer than your parents did." Silence crashed over the crowd. Emily's mother turned white. Her father tried to laugh it off, but his eyes flashed with anger. Lila giggled, oblivious to the horror she'd caused. That was all it took. The tension that had been simmering all day finally boiled over. Emily's aunt confronted Lila, voices rising above the music. Tyler's mother tried to intervene, but only made things worse, accusing Emily's family of ruining the evening. Within minutes, what had started as a celebration turned into open warfare. Relatives taking sides, old grudges resurfacing, whispered insults giving way to shouted accusations. Someone knocked over a vase. A glass shattered. Guests started leaving early, muttering apologies and complaints. Emily felt herself shrinking into the background, fighting back tears as the reception she'd dreamed about collapsed around her. In the corner, Ethan, her brother, looked ready to bolt. Zoe and Josh were gone, off somewhere arguing. Tyler finally found Emily by the window, where she was hiding behind a curtain of fake ferns. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emily wanted to scream, to demand why he hadn't stopped Josh or defended her, but all she could manage was, "I just want to go home." They stood in silence, the sounds of their ruined wedding echoing in the background. As the clock crept past midnight, the ballroom was nearly empty. Only a few family members remained, cleaning up the mess and avoiding eye contact. Emily's dress was stained with cake and tears. Her hair had come loose. All her careful preparations, all her hopes for perfection, gone in a flurry of humiliation and heartbreak. Emily left her own wedding through the kitchen door, unnoticed by most. Outside, the night was cool and silent. She wondered for the first time if the life she'd dreamed of was ever really meant for her, or if she'd been playing a part in someone else's story all along. Chapter 4. Fallout. The morning after the wedding felt like waking up in the wreckage of a storm. Emily's head throbbed with exhaustion and shame. She lay in a strange hotel room, not the bridal suite she'd once dreamed of, but a basic guest room she'd escaped to after the chaos, unable to face anyone. Her phone buzzed endlessly. At first, she didn't dare look. She knew what she'd find, not congratulations, but group texts with, "Are you okay?" And "That was something," and vague messages from distant relatives she barely remembered. Some were kind, most were not. One read simply, "Well, at least it'll be a story to tell your kids, if you make it that far." Another, "Sorry about last night. Hope the honeymoon is better than the wedding." Scrolling made her stomach twist. Facebook and Instagram notifications exploded. Photos already online, some blurry and unflattering, others with hashtags like number wedding fail, number awkward toast, number family drama. An old friend had posted a clip of Lila's drunken outburst, already racking up comments. "You can't script this. This is why I eloped. OMG, I'd die." Emily tried to block it out, but every new ping drove the shame deeper. It wasn't just the wedding that had unraveled. It was her sense of self. The world had watched her try and fail, and now they were dissecting her humiliation for entertainment. The suite next door was silent, but Emily could hear occasional voices. Tyler's family packing up, her mother crying, her father arguing with Lila. She pictured Tyler somewhere else, too ashamed or angry to face her. A text from Zoe finally broke the silence. "I'm sorry, I should have said something to Josh. Call me if you want." Emily stared at the message, then locked her phone. She felt utterly alone, like the last guest at her own failed party. A few hours later, she forced herself to get up, shower, and face the aftermath. She found her mother in the hotel lobby, sunglasses hiding her puffy eyes. "You don't have to explain." her mother said quietly. We've all survived embarrassment. It's part of life. What matters is how you move forward. Emily nodded, but the words rang hollow. The lobby was full of people avoiding her gaze, family, friends, even strangers who'd witnessed the drama and were now sharing it over breakfast. She saw Ethan in the parking lot smoking, looking smaller than she remembered. Sorry I wasn't there for you, he mumbled, not meeting her eyes. You were, Emily said. More than most. The car ride home with Tyler was silent. He stared out the window, jaw clenched. Finally, Emily broke the quiet. Are you angry at me? Or just at the whole thing? Tyler sighed. I don't know. Maybe both. Maybe just disappointed. I wanted to be happy for you, for us. But last night, it was a disaster. Maybe we're not built for this kind of thing. Emily wanted to argue but realized she had nothing left. She felt emptied out, like someone had scooped her insides and left only a shell. That week, the fallout rippled outward. Friends stopped texting. Some unfollowed her online. At work, whispers spread. Did you see her wedding on Facebook? That's why you keep things small. Emily dreaded seeing photos from the honeymoon that would never happen, the smiling faces that had already faded into memory. Zoe tried to reach out, but every conversation felt forced. Her mother sent advice articles about recovering from public embarrassment. Even her father, usually so talkative, kept his distance. For days, Emily wandered through her apartment in a daze, replaying every moment. The laughter, the accusations, the silence. Each memory was another cut. But slowly, a different feeling crept in. Not hope, not yet, but a stubborn spark of defiance. She had survived the worst night of her life. Now she had to decide. Would she let her shame define her, or would she reclaim her story? The scars were real, but so was her will to move forward. Chapter 5. The Turning Point. The first days after the wedding felt endless, each hour stretching with the weight of what had happened. Emily found herself replaying every moment. The looks, the laughter, the barbed comments, the sting of public humiliation. It was all there, swirling in her mind, impossible to escape. For a while, she simply shut down. She ignored texts, avoided social media, let the world pass by in a blur. Her mother's worried calls, Zoe's awkward apologies, her father's stilted attempts at comfort. Emily blocked them all out. Tyler spent most nights on the couch, silent and distant. Their apartment felt less like a home and more like a waiting room for a relationship on life support. One morning, Emily woke up before dawn and just sat. No tears left to cry, no strength to rage. In the pale light, her reflection looked unfamiliar. Tired eyes, pale skin, lips pressed tight. But beneath it all, something fierce was growing. A sense that she could not go on like this. If this was what rock bottom felt like, then she was done letting everyone else decide her value. She started small. She called Zoe. Really called. No texts, no half measures. The conversation was awkward at first, but Emily didn't let it drop. Why didn't you say something to Josh? She asked, voice calm but direct. Zoe hesitated. Honestly? I froze. I was embarrassed too. I wanted to defend you, but I didn't want to make a scene. I'm sorry, Em. You didn't deserve any of it. Emily listened, her heart pounding with an unfamiliar mix of anger and relief. I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but you let it happen. And that hurt too. I need people in my life who will stand up for me, even when it's messy. They talked, really talked, for the first time in months. When they hung up, Emily felt lighter, not healed, but less alone. That day, she wrote a long message to her mother, explaining how the pressure for perfection and the constant criticism had hurt her. She sent it not knowing what to expect and turned off her phone. It was the first time she'd set a real boundary. With Tyler, things were harder. He'd barely spoken since the wedding. One night after dinner, Emily finally broke the silence. I can't do this anymore. she said, voice steady. "Not just us. This, the pretending, the hiding, the trying to be perfect for everyone else. I'm tired, Tyler. I need to know if you want to fight for this, or if you're just done." Tyler looked up, surprised, as if seeing her for the first time. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, he said, "I don't know how to fix this. I feel like I failed you. I failed us." Emily shook her head. "We both did, but I can't carry it all alone. I'm willing to try if you are. But it has to be real. We need help, together, not just sweeping it under the rug." Tyler nodded, silent but thoughtful. For the first time, Emily saw uncertainty in his eyes, and maybe, just maybe, a glimmer of hope. The next day, Emily made another decision. She took a walk alone through the city, without her phone, letting herself breathe. She watched people hurry by, all living lives full of secrets and shame and silent struggles. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like the only person who had failed. Back home, she sat down and began writing. Not for social media, not for anyone else, just for herself. She poured out everything she'd wanted to say on her wedding day, her hurt, her anger, her disappointment, but also her stubborn hope that something better could come from all this pain. She made a list. What she wanted to forgive, what she refused to accept, and what she still believed she deserved. The world outside didn't change overnight. Gossip still swirled. Some friends drifted away. The scars of humiliation weren't gone. But inside, Emily felt a subtle but powerful shift. For the first time, she was reclaiming her own story. That evening, she opened her phone and, with shaking hands, posted a single photo from the wedding. Her and Ethan, laughing on the steps behind the hotel, messy hair and cake on her dress, but truly smiling. No captions, no hashtags, no explanations. Within minutes, messages poured in. Some were supportive, some curious. But for the first time, Emily didn't care what anyone thought. The turning point wasn't about public approval or image repair. It was about choosing herself. With all her scars, all her courage, and all the messy, painful truth. Chapter 6, Moving On. The months after the wedding didn't bring any miraculous new beginnings. There was no grand apology tour, no viral redemption arc. Instead, there were slow, awkward days where Emily picked through the debris of what had been her life, looking for something worth saving. At first, she grieved for the dream she'd lost, for the image of the perfect bride and wife that would never be hers. She let herself feel every ache, every pang of regret and humiliation. There were mornings when getting out of bed felt impossible, when the world outside her window seemed to have moved on, while she stayed frozen in that ballroom, surrounded by stares and whispers. Tyler and Emily tried, for a while, to make it work. They went to counseling, sat through sessions where they took turns speaking and listening, sometimes in tears, sometimes in silence. It was honest, sometimes brutally so. Tyler admitted he'd felt overwhelmed, that he'd been more worried about how things looked than about Emily herself. Emily confessed she'd spent so much time trying to be perfect that she'd forgotten to be real. They both apologized, again and again, for all the things they couldn't change. But some things, once broken, never fit together the same way. In the end, Tyler moved out. There was no screaming, no blame, just a shared sense of relief and quiet sadness. They wished each other well. That was all. The world, for a while, seemed determined to remind Emily of her failure. She saw engagement posts online, pictures of perfect honeymoons and families smiling in golden hour sunlight. She muted some accounts, unfollowed others. In the grocery store, she'd see wedding magazines at the checkout and have to look away. But with time, the pain dulled. The humiliations of her wedding became less like fresh wounds and more like scars, reminders of what she'd survived, not what had destroyed her. Emily rebuilt her life slowly. She started saying no more often, refusing to take on everyone else's guilt and expectations. She reconnected with her brother, Ethan, and found comfort in their messy, honest conversations. Her mother, finally understanding the depth of Emily's pain, apologized for her own role in the disaster, and for once, listened without judgment. Zoe, too, became a real friend again. They didn't talk about the wedding, not much, but one evening, over cheap takeout and old movies, Zoe squeezed her hand and simply said, "You deserved better, and so do I." Work was still awkward at first. Some colleagues avoided her, others were overly sympathetic. Eventually, the whispers faded. New people were hired. Life, relentless, moved on. One night, Emily opened her old wedding folder on her laptop. She scrolled through hundreds of photos, many painful, some unexpectedly sweet. Ethan and her dancing on the empty dance floor after the guests had left. Her mother wiping away tears, both of them laughing in spite of themselves. Tyler in one candid shot, looking at Emily with a kind of tired affection that hurt to remember, but also felt honest. She saved a handful of pictures, not the perfect, posed ones, but the messy, real moments. She deleted the rest. As months turned to a year, Emily realized she'd begun to forgive herself, not for failing, but for ever believing that being loved meant being flawless. She let go of old dreams and started imagining new ones. Trips she wanted to take alone, a new job she might pursue, maybe a home of her own one day. Not a fairy tale castle, just a place where she could close the door and breathe easy. She never posted another wedding photo, never tried to set the record straight. She let people think what they wanted. The story that mattered was the one she told herself, that she had lived through disaster and come out stronger. Not perfect. Undeniably herself. On the anniversary of her wedding, Emily took herself to a little restaurant, ordered her favorite meal, and raised a glass. Not to love or even to new beginnings, but to survival, to scars, to the ordinary magic of moving on. And for the first time in a long, long while, she smiled, truly smiled, and felt whole.